Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats, we will start the proceedings. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for joining us today to commemorate the rededication of the monument honoring the Jewish veterans who served in the Canadian Armed Forces in times of peace and war. 79 additional names have been added since the original plates were installed, and many relatives and friends of those who were added are here today, and we welcome you. Our seating capacity is limited, and we have done our best to facilitate you under the circumstances, and we hope that you can appreciate our efforts. Ken Stewart, our Memorial Committee Chairman, has printed a display of the monument indicating the names of those who are inscribed on it. So you can view them in the comfort of the building here. They've been hung up in a little room down at the end on the other side of the coffee shop for you to view if the weather is too inclement for you to go out and actually take a look at the monument. So if you wish, please feel free to visit the monument. It's adjacent to the parking lot where the flags are located. At this time, I'd also like to introduce the board members that are present and would like to also pay tribute to those members who gave so much of their time to the Jewish war veterans and this memorial project. So could the members please stand up? Joe Warner, Harry Colt. Harry's probably outside. Ken Stewart. Well, Ken is outside at 2. Ev Bloom. Nessie Edelman. They're busy working, I guess, and they don't realize I've started this. Alex Levin. Martin Maxwell. And I'd like to pay a special tribute to some of the members who we've appointed to as honorary board individuals who have done so much for this organization and have made this possible. Mike Brown, Jack Kahan, Ev Bluestein, who fortunately is with us today, Jack Klymans, etc. Being a religious minority, and Sid Gladstone, where's Sid? Sid's here too. And Maury Adams was a former member of our board as well. Jewish soldiers and their contributions were not often celebrated, but Jewish Canadians were the highest percentage of any ethnic community in the country serving in the armed forces during the Second World War, and many were the recipients of awards for their distinguished performance of their duties during the war. So if you could please rise now for O Canada, which will be sung by cantor Tibor Kavari. Thank you very much, Cantor. We're just approaching 11 o'clock. I don't know if every clock is right on time, but we will have 2 minutes silence in a couple of minutes, I guess. So I can tell you a joke. When the Pope came to Toronto a few years ago, he was at the airport, and they had a reception for him, and a big limousine was waiting to take him away. So they took him to the limousine, and he walked around to order the limousine, and the chauffeur opened up the door for him to get in, and he walked around the car, kicked the tires a little, and he said to the chauffeur, "You know what? I want to drive this car." And the chauffeur said, "But Your Holiness," he says, "I'm the Pope." He says, "I'm your driver. You don't know where to go." He says, "I said I want to drive this car." So the Pope says, "Okay." The driver says, "Fine, okay." So the Pope gets in, starts driving. He was driving a little erratic, and a police cruiser pulled him over. And one of the policemen gets out and walks over to the car, and the Pope puts down the window, and the policeman stops. And the Pope says, "Was I doing something wrong?" And the policeman says, No, you weren't doing anything wrong." Goes back in the car. His partner says to him, "Well, what were you doing?" He says, "There was somebody in that car that was really, really big." He says, "Who was it, the mayor?" He says, No, bigger. The premier? Bigger. The prime minister? Bigger than the prime minister. "Well, who was it?" He says, "I don't know, but he had the Pope for a chauffeur." Anyways, my watch says it's 11 o'clock. So I would like to have 2 minutes silence. If you could all stand, please, for 2 minutes to commemorate the memory of our fallen. Thank you. Now we will have Cantor Tibor Kavari do El Mel Rachamim in honor of those who have passed on.
Please rise.
Malet rachamim, shochen b'meromim, ametei menucha nechona, al kanafei hashechinah. B'malhot kedoshim, teodim וגיבורים כזוד הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים לנשמות חיילי אומות העולם שנלחמו בתפקידי ביטחון ושלום ושנפלו במלחמתם בעבור שאנחנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני ונחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם ותעמוד לנו לכל העולם גבורתם ונאמר Amen.
Please be seated.
Thank you very much, Cantor. We will now have our invocation by our chaplain, Rabbi Howard Morrison.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Almighty God, our Father in heaven, we pause on this day of remembrance to honor the memories of the heroic sons and daughters of our country who rendered their full measure of devotion on all the far-flung battlefields of the world in the defense of Canada and the free world. They fought valiantly and courageously in storms of fire and blood, so that we, the living, may enjoy the blessings of liberty, democracy, and freedom. May the deeds of our fallen heroes be an inspiration to us all. Grant that their supreme sacrifices shall not have been in vain. Let this Remembrance Day stimulate us to be mindful of our responsibilities and duties as conscientious citizens of this great nation. We pray to you, merciful Father, sustain the leaders of all nations in their efforts to remove the dark shadow of fear which lurks over the abodes of peace-loving peoples. Help all nations of our world to realize the cruelty of bloodshed and the futility of warfare. Inspire them to labor with all their might to banish conflict and strife and to establish world peace. Hasten the fulfillment of the vision of our prophets, when the work of righteousness shall be peace, and its effect tranquility and security forever. Lo yisa goy el goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. When nation shall not lift sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And let us say Amen.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Morrison. I would now like to recognize the greetings, donors, and dignitaries that are here with us today. just have to find the list. Okay. Well, I can't find the list, so I'm just going to have to do this from what I can see. Okay. I'd like Marilyn Sinclair from the Holocaust Education Center, right? Yossi Milstein from the Israeli Consulate. Oh, JNF, I'm sorry. Irit Stopper from the Deputy Consul, Israeli Consulate. Mark Adler, MP. Monty Quinter, MPP. Peter Sherman, MPP. Kostas Menegakis, MP, Richmond Hill. Councillor James Pasternak. And then we have from the Toronto Police Service, Deputy Chief Mark Sanders. You can please stand, gentlemen. Deputy Chief Mike Frederico. Sergeant Lawrence Sager, representing Superintendent Sam Fernandez. Just want to make a little comment. Prior to the Second World War, or just after the Second World War, or prior to the end of the Second World War, Toronto Police only hired Anglo-Saxon officers. So you can see today the diversity that the Toronto Police have in reaching out to the community. Deputy Chief Mark Sanders is obviously of African ancestry. Deputy Chief Mike Federico is of Italian ancestry. Lawrence Sager is of Jewish ancestry. And Superintendent Fernandez is of South Asian ancestry. And so I want to congratulate the police service and those people who have been serving us for honorably and well. Thank you very much for honoring us today. Okay, we are also, okay, now we have received greetings from the Premier, Kathleen Wynne, and the greetings have been brought by MPP Monty Quinter. Peter Sherman has brought greetings as well. I can't read out everything because I know we're going to go beyond our time limits here. We also have James Pasternak bringing us greetings. We have, let me just look. Chief Bill Blair has sent his greetings, and certainly not last but not least, the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper. And we also have had some wreaths given to us, which will be laid out at the memorial. Now, if I've missed anybody, I'll try and catch up. At this time also, I'd like to have Martin Maxwell come forward. Martin is going to tell us a soldier's story. It's a very interesting story, and I'm sure that it'll bring some tears to you when he finishes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's amazing to see how many people are here. Thank you. There's 540 names up there, and more will be added. Each one has a story. And those of you who sent in their names, if you have a story about them, send it in to us. And I will tell you about 2 of those stories. Many years ago, when I spoke at Bat Tikva, telling them that we, the veterans, have a dream. We want to have a memorial where all men and women of Jewish faith, wherever they fought, should have their name on. But we couldn't possibly carry the financial burdens all of ourselves. When I finished speaking, a lady came up to me and says, I'm going to give you a check for 100 times chai. Chai is $1,800. And I said, who was this person you want to put up there? Your grandfather, your father? No, about a little boy that I knew, a distant family. Of the 14 people who were at Auschwitz, he was the only one that survived. In 3 years, he spent from DP camp to DP camp. And at that time, a wonderful song came out. It's called Wir hin soll ich gehen. It means tell me where to go. All the doors are closed to me. But at the age of 17, he found two friends who were decided to go to Palestine at that time. And they joined the army, and at the Battle of Latrun, he died. And the person said to me, I want someone to remember that he once lived. If he was going to die, at least he died defending his country instead of being ashes as Auschwitz. Tov lamot be'adatzenu. It is good to die for our country. It is, of course, better to live, but sometimes we have no choice. The second person I'm telling you about, he was born in Poland. At the age of 2, his parents took him to Austria for a better life and less anti-Semitism until Hitler came in, and he was attending a yeshiva when all of them, the students, the rabbis, and the teachers, were arrested and sent to concentration camp. But because he was the one who had an SS man who polished his shoes and did everything else for him, he said to him one day, I'm being sent to Berlin, Obersturmbannführer. Here's a letter that says, this man is not an enemy of the state, and any help you can give him will be appreciated. When Crystal Night came and he was arrested and was going to be sent to a concentration camp, he showed that letter and he was let go. He was fortunate he was on the kinder transport to England, and then he joined the American Air Force. He took as a rear gunner and bombardier. They don't live too long. On a raid over Romania, the oil fields, his plane was shot down, but he and an Irish crew member were the only ones who were able to bail out. And when they got there, when they got down, the Germans said, let's shoot them. He said, no, let's interrogate them first and then shoot them. But Marshal Tito and his people raided the camp, killed the Germans, and freed them. And in 1948, when he knew there was trouble going to be in Israel, he and the Irish non-Jewish member of his crew went to the state of Israel. And I'm going to read you the plaque to tell you who he was. This is from the Friends of the Israel Defense Forces in memory of Leo Maisel, in appreciation for his sacrifices and fight in the service to the state of Israel and the Jewish people during the War of Independence. This was given to him at the inauguration dinner for the Friends of Israel Defense Force in 1996. Leo Maisel, who was he? He was my brother. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to call on Joseph Warner in recognition of the Machal veterans. And Joseph will explain to you who are not familiar with Machal about Machal. Joseph?
I feel very honored to be able to tell all of you wonderful people the Machal story, which starts off in November of 1947 when the United Nations passed the resolution to divide Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jewish leaders in the country immediately agreed, but the Arabs turned it down. At that time, there were 600,000 Jews in the country, and the Israeli army as such of 30,000 poorly armed but tough fighters. The authorities realized that their fighters were mainly infantry-type fighters, and they had nothing else. So they sent a number of their people to some of the larger free world countries looking for volunteers, especially among the veterans who had just finished fighting 3 years earlier. By the time they organized the Machal and they started arriving in Israel, it was at the same time that weapons and ammunition was arriving, so things got a little bit brighter for the Israeli armed forces. And I would just like to read this very quickly to you and let you know that it was the Machal volunteers that drove the tanks and armored cars, flew the planes, which include both the fighter planes and the transport planes that brought vitally needed equipment and supplies, mainly from Czechoslovakia, fired most of the artillery, manned the radar units, put old equipment into working order, reassembled the Messerschmitt fighter planes that arrived in pieces from Czechoslovakia, participated in the medical services, and helped in the organization of a conventional and modern army. The number of Machal from the world was about 3,500. From Canada, there was 260, of which 11 boys paid the final sacrifice. Among those 11 were 3 non-Jewish pilots, and besides them, there were quite a few non-Jewish Machal members. In my particular unit, we had a red-blooded Navajo Indian from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who felt for the Jews and came to fight with us. Unfortunately, Toronto had 75 Machal fighters, and most of them are now gone. And we only have a few that I could get together here today so you could see what fighters looked like at the age of 85 and 90. I'll do this in alphabetical order. Irving Matlow fought in the 7th Brigade in the Galilee. Jack Berger, also in the infantry. I have a very unusual married couple who met in the Machal days and are still married today, Daisy and Al Spiegel. Al started off in the infantry and then switched to the Air Force. I'm not sure exactly what he did there, but he wasn't flying. And Daisy was a nurse. And the only one left is myself. I was in the anti-tank unit fighting with the Givati Brigade against the Egyptians, and here we are. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I would now like to introduce our guest speaker for today. Our guest speaker is Jeremy Diamond. Jeremy is currently the campaign director at the Vimy Foundation, leading on all aspects of the Vimy 2017 Centennial Campaign, including developing national awareness and fundraising initiatives and building a new education center in Vimy, France. He has been working in the field of public history for 20 years, and for the past 9 years with the Historica Dominion Institute, holding senior positions to help build a national office from 6 employees to more than 30, and an annual budget of $1 million more than $12 million. During this time, Jeremy launched more than a dozen new initiatives that helped create an awareness of Canadian history among young people. Prior to the Institute, Jeremy promoted Canadian history and public education at the Ontario Heritage Trust, Hudson's Bay Company, and the Learning Partnership. He has appeared regularly as a commentator on television and radio and been published numerous times in national publications on issues related to history, citizenship, and civic engagement. He is also active on a number of boards, including the Enoch Turner Schoolhouse and Faywood ABC Child Care Center. A native of Toronto, he graduated from York University with a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in history, and the University of Waterloo with a Master of Arts in Public History. Jeremy?
Thank you very much. It's okay. It is very humbling to be here. An incredible crowd here today. Remembrance Day is always an important day in my life, considering the things that I've done in my career. But I just wanted to recognize our elected officials here today, our special guests, families that have made it here today, and most of all, of course, our veterans. I've had the opportunity to work with veterans myself for over 10 years, and they are by far the most special people that I have come across in my career and history. So I'd love to see them here today, and it's quite an honor for me to be in the same room as you. One quick thing before I start my presentation about the Vimy Foundation, which I will keep quite brief, is I'm going to hold this. Is I got my start in this building about almost 20 years ago. I had the pleasure of working with Stephen Spiesman, who many of you probably know from the nodding heads in the audience, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And he taught me a lot about the importance of Jewish history. He taught me a lot about the importance of learning about Jewish military history. Probably about 20 feet from here, I went through records, I went through archival footage, I went through all kinds of detail around telling the stories about the incredible sacrifice and service of our Jewish military, up to that point that I did not know much about. And I worked in that room with a number of veterans themselves who have since passed away, who taught me about their sacrifice and their service. And to be back here talking about the Vimy Foundation and how we're trying to keep the memories alive for all generations is an incredible experience, humbling, as I said, and I think quite fitting. So if you can start the presentation, and I will go through a couple of slides that talk a little bit about the foundation, but really to culminate in what we're trying to do here in the lead up to the centennial of the Battle of Vimy Ridge in 2017. So I'm not going to read them off because I've done enough presentations and I've been on the other side where you guys are sitting in enough times to know that the best way of doing this is to for me to talk a little bit about the foundation, but you to spend a few moments reading about what we do. But really the Vimy Foundation is a small outfit. We're really kind of like a startup charity. We started about 7-8 years ago as a group that really is trying to create awareness on the importance of keeping the memories of Canada and the First World War alive. We know, and everybody in this room, of course, knows that there are no First World War veterans alive in Canada. The last one passed away about 3 years ago. I had the honor of spending a day with him about a year before he passed away. So we're trying to do, what we're trying to do at the foundation is keep alive those memories now that those final links to that war have passed on. So some of the things that we've tried to do is lobby the government on a number of issues related to getting the Vimy Ridge Memorial on the $20 bill, lowering the flags to half-mast on Vimy Day, April 9th, and also trying to celebrate, and we consider it a celebration, which I'll get to in a second, Vimy Day at a number of dinners and events across the country. The mission, as I was saying, was really to try and use Vimy as sort of a tent pole to be able to talk about Canada and the First World War. An incredible time in our history, something that many Canadians have a connection to, either personally or emotionally, or geographically by having a cenotaph or a war memorial in their community. So what we're trying to do is keep that awareness high, keep that connection front and center, especially around days like today, Remembrance Day, days like Vimy Day, days like Canada Day, and other opportunities to commemorate anniversaries of the First World War. One of the things that we try and promote is the Vimy pin that I'm wearing, and I wish I had 250 or so to bring here today, but they're easily attainable or purchased through our website, but we try and give out as many as we can as well. A Vimy pin and a Vimy pilgrimage medal. The Vimy pin is an opportunity to kind of say what we say on Remembrance Day by using the poppy, saying that same thing on Vimy Day, on April 9th, that we will not forget Vimy, we will not forget Canada in the First World War. And that pin represents, through the 4 colors, the 4 divisions that fought together for the first time during the Battle of Vimy Ridge, April 9th to April 12th, 1917. The Vimy Pilgrimage Medal is a recreation of the medal that Canadians actually received when they made the first pilgrimage across the ocean in 1836 for the unveiling of the Vimy Ridge Memorial. Veterans, their families, other Canadians spent a couple of weeks by ship, went from Canada in the 1930s, right after the Depression, in the middle of the Depression, to go back to a place that they probably never wanted to return to see the Vimy Memorial erected in 1936. So what we're doing is saying that anybody that goes to Vimy gets one of those pilgrimage medals, because they too have made a pilgrimage of sorts, whether it's to see some of their family history, to see some of their country's history, or just to pay their respects. That pilgrimage medal is something that they can take forward with them and wear on Vimy Day going forward. The history of Vimy Ridge, again, it's a date that I think in the minds of those people here is something that I think we recognize. We maybe know the word Vimy, but we may not exactly know what it's about. I'm not going to go through the history of Vimy today because I don't think it's the time to do it, but very briefly, 100,000 Canadians fought at the Battle of Vimy Ridge, 10,000 casualties, including over 3,500 that died in 3 days, 3.5 days at the Battle of Vimy Ridge. It was the first time that Canadians fought together as one. And many people feel, historians included, that this was the time, the First World War, that we entered as a British colony and we left the war as Canadians. This is the message that we're trying to promote to young people, especially to Canadians in general, that this was a major, important event in our nation's history, and it was, in many ways, the birth of our nation, Canada. The Canadian National Vimy Memorial, for those that have been there, is an incredible piece of history. It's an incredible piece of architecture built by a Canadian, opened and unveiled in 1936. And for those of you that have been there that may not know this, but when you go to visit the Vimy Memorial, you're actually in Canada. Just after the Second World War, the French government gifted the land to Canada to build this monument. And the monument isn't to those 3,500 that died, but it's in honor of all those Canadians that served and died in France. It was recently restored about 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't have to tell you that it is an incredible, even say magical experience to go and see this monument and pay your respects if you do get to go and see it either in the next few years or, of course, for the centennial in 2017. A couple of photos of the battle, of the memorial, and of students as well. Through the Vimy Foundation, we send thousands of students over every year to make that pilgrimage. 16, 17, 18-year-olds, many of whom are the same age of those that fought at the Battle of Vimy Ridge, to go over and pay their respects, and really to make a textbook come alive for them. They learn about Vimy in their classrooms. They maybe watch a grainy old documentary on Vimy, a Heritage Minute possibly, but there's nothing like actually going there and seeing it. The memorial itself is actually built on the ridge, on the battlefield, and the new education center will be built about 100 meters from the front lines. So you're actually physically walking in the footsteps of history. We have an annual dinner that we hold every year, started in 2013, and we'll do it right up to 2017 and beyond, where people from across the country, military, public and private sector officials, students, and educators, come and celebrate, commemorate, and thank each other for the work that they do to keep the memory alive of the First World War, particularly Vimy. General Hilliard there, the former Chief of Defense Staff, is our patron, and we're having our next dinner May 5th at the Royal York, and we'd love to see some of you there as a way of raising some money and raising some awareness towards the building of this education center. So the Education Center has really become our crown jewel of what we're doing at the foundation and the lead of our 2017 Centennial project. What we're trying to do with Education Center is take a temporary visitor center, and I mean temporary even though it was built in 1982, that is currently on site, and create a center that really befits the battle and the story and the sacrifice of these men in 1917. It will be about a 20,000 square foot building, 2 stories, an opportunity for visitors to learn about Canada and the First World War, to learn about the Battle of Vimy Ridge, of course, but also to learn about the story of the building of the Vimy Memorial, the monument itself. The Government of Canada has generously committed $5 million to this project. Thank you to Mark Adler and his colleagues in Ottawa. But now it's up to us. It's up to us as a foundation. It's up to us as a country to match that $5 million with another $5 million, and dare we say, even more than that. We think this project can be $20 million. And we think it's a great opportunity to use the centennial of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, but also Canada's 150th birthday in 2017 as a chance to celebrate our proud history, commemorate, of course, and commemorate the sacrifice and the service of those soldiers, but also to celebrate an important part of our history. That's an aerial view of where it's going to be. We haven't started yet. This is a grassy area right beside the current Education Center or Visitor Center, but if you go to the right of that screen, it's where the actual front was. It's where the tunnels and the trenches still remain. You can walk on them, you can walk under them and in them, and really get a feel for what this history was all about. So we are going to build something that may possibly look like this, although these are just artist renditions, so don't hold me to it. But something that is architecturally stunning, not unlike the Vimy Memorial itself. Something that inside is a memorable experience for every visitor that will not only be used as an education center, but also from an architectural standpoint, walk through there and feel that you've never been in something that looks like this. And then on the grounds outside, you'll be able to see the Vimy Memorial from the center, whether it's through glass, whether it's on a second story lookout. The details are still getting organized and confirmed, but I would say by this time next year, we're going to have a real plan put together, a fundraising strategy up and successful, and we're going to be breaking ground 2 years today, November 11th, 2015. So our campaign is called Vimy 2017. We've created a new website. We've created an awareness campaign, media partnerships, all kinds of great energy just in the last 6 days since it launched on Remembrance Week last Monday. And this is an opportunity for us to talk to people about how they can get involved. Those that have been to Vimy, those that have heard the word Vimy, those students that have come home and said, my teacher was mentioning Vimy today. What's that all about? This is a chance for them to get involved. And what we're calling it now is Give a Vimy for Vimy. And as many of you in this audience may know, but I would say some don't, on the back of the $20 bill, the new polymer 20s, the one that's called plastic, is the Vimy Memorial. It's on the back and it adorns our money. And that says something. The $20 bill is the most circulated banknote in Canada. It's something that everybody here takes out of the bank machine just about every day, and it is on our money. It's also on our passport. It's also in our citizenship guide for new Canadians. This isn't just another First World War battle. This is part of who we are. It's part of our identity. It's part of our citizenship. It's part of our story. So we're encouraging Canadians to give a Vimy for Vimy. Give a $20 bill towards the building of this new education center. We've raised over $12,000 in the last 5 days, $20 at a time, from Canadians that feel that they too want to do their part. They can get a Vimy pin in exchange for their $20 donation. They get their name online at an online registry that says they've contributed. And folks such as Rick Mercer and Don Cherry, Celine Dion, Rick Hillier, Paul Gross, and others. Minister Fantino, the Minister of Veterans Affairs, had a wonderful launch event with us last week. Prime Minister Harper, very, very supportive of this initiative and is willing to spread the word himself to his colleagues and and those in and out of government to spread the word. So we think we have something here. We think we have a community, we think we have people interested in this, and we think we have a chance to really do something special. This is the front of our new website. So somehow we got Celine Dion to pose with a $20 bill. So we're going to use that picture forever. This is a great landing spot, a destination, if you will, to find out more. So those that can get to the website, they can find out more about Give a Vimy for Vimy, and of course the foundation itself. And these are just some concluding points about what we're trying to do at the foundation, how you can get involved, and also how we're working closely with the Government of Canada, how we're working with public sector and private sector as well, and how we think that this is a real great opportunity for everybody here and for all Canadians to get involved and to get engaged and to create awareness on something that we feel is very important. This is how you find us. We love to hear from you, and I really appreciate it, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much for being with us today, Jeremy. I do have a plaque to present you. I think it's still outside. If you don't mind. No, sit. Sit. We'll get the plaque to you, and we'll also have a donation for your spending time with us and visiting with us for your foundation. One of the other things I mentioned earlier today is that we have a list of the names on the plates on the memorial. And we didn't know as I said, what the weather was going to be like. And sometimes, even when you're out there, you have to bend over to read the names and find them. So what we've done, we've taken photographs of the nameplates. So all the names are on those posters that are down on the left, on my left here, on the east side of the building. So if you want to take the time to go and take a look and see that your names are there, please feel free to do so. If you want to go to the memorial and see the memorial in person, you can do so as well. They tell me I forgot to introduce myself, so I'm Norman Gardner. I'm the post commander for the Jewish War Veterans. So, now, I also want to acknowledge our presence who came in while we were in a program of Colonel Jeff Dorfman. Jeff, would you like to stand up, take a bow? Jeff's the former commander of the Governor General's Horse Guards, and has been very, very active in the Canadian Army Reserve for a good many years. I just want to make sure I mentioned everybody's name. Yes, I also want to pay attention to acknowledging the presence here today of Honorary Colonel Matthew Gassenbeck III. Colonel. And is Captain William Hutter here as well? Oh, he's ill? Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Right, and we also have greetings from Mayor Rob Ford as well. So he couldn't be with us today. So to continue on with the program, please stand for Hatikva. Cantor Tamari.
Kol od balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homiya ulefatei mizrach kadima ein letzion so תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות אלפיים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
Thank you very much, Cantor Tamari. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your program for today. We will have refreshments out in the foyer, so please stick around and say hello. And again, thank you very much for joining us here today and on this very momentous occasion. Thank you. Sure.
Thanks,
Okay,
Norm.
fine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's great.
I got to get that plaque.
That's okay. Get that, and I'm going to give you this.
Okay, thank you very
We could
much.
have done exchange like we were in Japan or something.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Maureen. Thank you. Okay.
I forgot the papers.